Top 10 people who survived the impossible. Number 10. Brave warrior. Louis Zampermini had a colorful life. He represented the USA at the 1936 Berlin Olympics and was a pilot during World War II. In 1943, his airplane malfunctioned and he crashed into the Pacific. In the area controlled by Japanese forces, Louis, together with 2 other crew members, found floating remains of a pontoon and some food supplies. After a while, sharks started to attack and they fended them off just with paddles. A Japanese bomber also shot at them 6 times. After 33 days of drifting, one of his companions died. Louis, along with the other surviving pilot, organized a funeral for him on the spot. On the 47th day at sea, they finally made landfall and were immediately taken prisoner by the Japanese Navy and put into a prisoner of war camp. The Olympian endured savage torture at the hands of the sadistic camp sergeant and spent 2.5 years in captivity. Louis died in 2014. Number 9. Manhattan Fall. Alcitz Moreno worked as a window washer along Edgar, his brother. They specialized in cleaning Manhattan skyscrapers and understood the risks involved. In December 2007, their work platform made a free fall from the 47th floor of a building and crashed into an alley. When doctors arrived, they were amazed to discover that both brothers were conscious. As luck would have it, the cleaning rig took on most of the impact, leaving the brothers with their arms, legs, and ribs broken. And somehow, despite a 47-floor fall, the brothers avoided the most serious of possible injuries, including spinal and pelvic fractures. The brothers amazed everyone, not only by surviving, but by a rapid recovery that took just under 1 year. Number 8. Bear attack. Richard Mayer began the morning of October 3, 2011, just like any other, by letting his dog out for a walk. The dog dashed into the woods surrounding the home, but rapidly returned with an unexpected, gigantic bear chasing her. This big black bear literally broke down the door to Richard's home and stormed into the house after the dog, attacking Richard and waking up his wife, Angela. She tried to intervene and quickly discovered that stopping the bear attack would be a double-edged sword. The bear turned on her. This prompted the dog to leap onto the attacking animal. The bear was already furious and attacking Richard again. It chewed on his head for a little while and then, amazingly, stopped, went out onto the front porch and sat down, seeming quite bored with the whole exchange. Surprisingly, the married couple was discharged from the hospital the same day as the attack. Richard's head required 37 staples to be closed, and it's worth mentioning that their 10-year-old son had slept through the entire event. Good for him. Number 7. 2 atomic bombs. Tsutomu Yamaguchi was on a business trip to Hiroshima on August the 6th, 1945. On that day, the United States dropped a nuclear bomb on the city. Burned and barely able to comprehend what had happened, the businessman understood they had witnessed a bomb unlike any other used before. Yamaguchi returned home to Nagasaki the following day, and while returning to his wife and child, he saw burning fields, shattered buildings, and charred corpses. And as the bridges were down, he had to swim through a river full of corpses to get home. His arrival came the day before Nagasaki was also devastated by the second U.S. atomic bomb on August the 9th. He survived along with his wife and his son despite a high dose of radiation. Yamaguchi lived until 2010. Number 6. Tsunami. Let's not leave Japan behind just yet. Let's talk about something that occurred in the present day. The unfortunate earthquake of 2011 caused the most expensive natural disaster in history, resulting in a tsunami that hit the Japanese coast, causing the Fukushima nuclear power plant to fail. 3 days after the wave, rescuers found many dead bodies, although at some point they heard a cry. They found a 4-month-old, completely healthy baby hidden in the remains. The way this baby survived the tsunami and managed not to drown remains a mystery to this very day. Finally, a baby girl was later reunited with her happy family. Number 5. Alone at Sea. Jennifer Apple, an experienced sailor who took a new friend and 2 dogs on a cruise from Honolulu to Tahiti, was supposed to only be away for 2 months. But the sailing trip was cursed from the start. On the first day, they lost their phones, and a few weeks later, their boat was hit by a powerful storm. The mast of the boat malfunctioned, and the engine had flooded with water, and most of their communication capabilities had been severed. Despite their hopeless situation, the women didn't give up. And thanks to advice from a local fisherman, the 2 had managed to bring along a year's worth of food and some backup supplies in case of an emergency such as this. Jennifer managed to repair the water purifier, but the 2 became psychologically tormented by sounds of sharks slamming themselves into the hull at night, apparently invoked by their dogs barking. Eventually, after 176 days lost at sea, the 2 were rescued after they were randomly spotted by a Taiwanese fishing vessel. After the rescue, they said having the dogs with them is what helped relieve their tension and anxiety. Number 4. Trapped beneath a boulder. The world heard about Aaron Ralston thanks to the movie 127 Hours back from 2010. The film's title refers to the period of time the man spent in Blue John Canyon, Utah, after he fell and was trapped in a narrow slot with his right arm wedged against a rock, which was held down by a massive boulder. For 5 days, Aaron struggled to free himself and also battled with dehydration and hypothermia. He was running out of water and food after 5 days trapped beneath the massive boulder, resolving to set himself free by amputating his own right arm with the use of a wimpy little pocket knife. After that, he left the cliff and found his closest friends, who provided him with the further needed assistance. Number 3. The longest hypothermic survivor. In 1999, a Swedish citizen was skiing her favorite run, but suddenly lost control and shot headfirst right down a waterfall. She was trapped between 20 centimeters of ice and rocks, critically injured and unable to move. The poor girl spent 80 minutes in this ice-cold waterfall, with her body temperature falling to 13.7 degrees Celsius, which is the lowest recorded body temperature for a survivor of hypothermia. Miraculously, she survived. Number 2, struck by lightning. And that's 7 times. Roy Sullivan was either the luckiest or unluckiest man in the world, depending on how you look at it. He's the only survivor of 7 lightning strikes to appear in the Guinness Book of World Records. The first strike occurred in 1942 and the last in 1977, and he was only admitted to the hospital once for burns on his stomach and chest. Sadly, this ranger from Virginia died by a self-inflicted gunshot wound in 1983 at the age of 71. Number 1. Siberian solitude. In 2014, a 70-year-old who had lived her entire life in isolation had written letters to newspapers asking for help. She asked for someone with a good heart to help her around her house because she was becoming old and weak. The woman lived alone for 26 years. Her family had lived in isolation since 1936, barely knowledgeable of the outside world, for decades. They successfully hid for 40 years until 1978, when one of the family members died. And from that time, the Siberian woman named Agava lived in silence. Her only company were 3 goats, 8 cats, a rooster, and hens. It takes 2 days to get to her home and requires complex logistics. First hovercraft, then boat, and finally a trek on foot. That's it for today's episode. Hit the like button, subscribe, smash the bell, and leave us a comment.